Their families fled danger in Guatemala seeking safety in America. Now, in a quiet Virginia town, their teens are disappearing at a rate of one almost every month. Where did they go? A quiet street in Culpeper, Virginia, the kind of place where everyone supposedly knows everyone. But here, over the past 5 years, a chilling pattern has emerged. Teenagers, specifically, Guatemalan teenagers, vanishing without a trace. Not one, not two, but as many as 10 disappearing in a single year. Imagine the ripple of fear that sends through a close-knit community. Where did they go? Why aren't we hearing more about this? Tonight, we delve into the unsettling mystery haunting this small American town. Culpeper, Virginia, where manicured main streets and white picket fences paint the perfect portrait of small-town America. But just beyond that polished facade, an entire community lives in the shadows, and their children are vanishing. Nestled in Virginia's rolling hills, Culpeper feels like a place frozen in time. Quaint brick storefronts, church steeples piercing blue skies, neighbors waving from porches. It's the kind of town you'd see on a postcard, but this picture hides a deeper truth. Beneath the surface thrives a parallel world, a vibrant, resilient, yet often invisible community of immigrants. Most crossed oceans and borders from Guatemala, fleeing crushing poverty or gang violence that offered no future. They came searching for refuge, for a sliver of the safety Culpeper promised. And they found work, backbreaking shifts in the sprawling poultry plants that smell of bleach and feathers, or dawn-to-dusk labor on the vast farms that blanket the countryside. These jobs power Culpeper's economy, yet the workers remain ghosts in its narrative. Their children grew up here. They walk the same sidewalks, sit in Culpeper's classrooms, cheer at Friday night football games. But their reality is split. At home, they're translators for parents navigating a confusing system. They're breadwinners after school, their paychecks helping families here and back in Guatemala. They carry adult burdens on teenage shoulders, the weight of two worlds. They are Culpeper, woven into its fabric, yet they walk a tightrope, too American for the past they escaped, but never quite seen as fully belonging here. And in that space of in-between, they became uniquely, tragically vulnerable. Culpeper looked safe. It felt safe. But then, starting around 2018, a chilling whisper began to snake through the Guatemalan community. It started quietly, almost like a rumor you didn't want to believe. A 16-year-old boy. He went out one evening, maybe to see friends, maybe just for some air. He didn't come home. His bed stayed empty. His parents waited, frantic, checking their phones every minute. Silence. Then, a 17-year-old girl. She was dependable, worked hard after school, helped her family. One day, she didn't show up for class, didn't show up for her shift. Her phone? Dead. Gone dark. Just like that. Vanished. No note. No angry goodbye. Just gone. These weren't the first kids ever to go missing anywhere. But in Culpeper, in this community, the suddenness was jarring. It felt wrong. Deeply wrong. At first, people tried to explain it away. Maybe they were runaways. Teenagers do that, right? Rebelling, seeking freedom, escaping strict parents. Maybe they'd gone to another city, chasing a dream or a friend. Authorities sometimes leaned into this idea. Paperwork might get filed, but the urgency felt muted. Probably just ran off. The whispers said, even from some outside the community. But the families knew. They knew their kids. These weren't kids who talked about running away. These were kids carrying responsibilities, sending money home, translating for their parents at the doctor's office. They had roots here, however fragile. Running away into complete silence? It didn't fit. And then it happened again. And again. Not months apart. Sometimes weeks. Another Guatemalan teenager. Mostly boys. 16, 17, 18, but girls too. Young women disappearing without a trace. The frequency was the first terrifying clue. This wasn't random bad luck. This wasn't isolated teenage drama. This was something else. Something dark and specific. It was almost exclusively targeting their community. Their sons. Their daughters. The realization started to sink in. Cold and heavy. This wasn't about individuals making bad choices. This was a pattern. A terrifying, deliberate pattern emerging right here. In their town. For the families. The horror of a missing child was compounded by an impossible, suffocating fear. Fear of the authorities. Many parents were undocumented, living in the shadows, working hard, staying quiet. Reporting a missing child meant stepping into the light. It meant talking to police. It meant risking everything: deportation, separation from other children, losing the fragile stability they'd built. Imagine that choice. Your child is gone, vanished. You are sick with worry, imagining the worst. But reaching out for official help could destroy the rest of your family, could get you sent back to the danger you fled. So, what do? Do you scream for help and risk losing everything else? Or do you search desperately on your own, relying only on whispers, community networks, frantic calls back home to Guatemala asking, "Have you heard anything? Anything at all?" The silence on the other end of the phone was its own kind of torture. So, they searched quietly. They knocked on doors the police wouldn't. They asked questions in corners of town officials might overlook. They shared photos, not on official posters, but on phones, in church halls, in the break rooms of the poultry plants. "Have you seen him? She was last wearing this. Please. If you know anything." Trust was scarce, but the need was overwhelming. They formed fragile networks, passing information like precious secrets, always looking over their shoulder. Was someone watching? Was asking questions putting them, or others, in danger? The fear was paralyzing, but the love for their missing children was stronger. They had to look. They had to try. By 2019, the whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were a constant, low hum of dread in the Guatemalan community. The disappearances weren't stopping. They were accelerating. 5 teens gone, then 7, then, unthinkably, nearing 10 in a single year. 10 young lives vanished from the streets of Culpeper. The sheer numbers shattered any remaining illusion. This wasn't a series of sad, unconnected events. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a trend, a relentless, horrifying trend. It was an alarming, consistent drain of young lives right out of the heart of their community. A community that already felt unseen, now felt actively hunted. The word epidemic started to form on lips, heavy with fear. By 2020, the truth was undeniable, and it was terrifying. Their children weren't just running away. They weren't just getting lost. Something, or someone, was taking them from their homes, their schools, the streets they walked, taking them from their families who loved them, who needed them, who searched for them in the shadows. The why was a gaping void. The how was a terrifying mystery. The who was a question mark filled with dread. All they knew for sure was the crushing weight of absence. The empty chair at the table, the untouched bed, the birthday that passed without them, and the chilling certainty. It was happening here. It was targeting them, and it showed no signs of stopping. Culpeper, the picture-perfect town, had a hidden, monstrous reality, and their children were paying the price. 10 teenagers gone in a year. Imagine the silence that follows. It's not quiet. It's the deafening sound of fear. After 2020, fear didn't just visit the Guatemalan families in Culpeper. It moved in. It sat at their kitchen tables. It followed them to work. It woke them up at night. Every time a teenager was even 5 minutes late coming home, that fear exploded. Was this it? Was it their turn? The phone would feel heavy in a parent's hand. Should they call? Was it too soon? Was it already too late? That simple act, waiting for a child to walk through the door, became a daily torture. The normal worries of parenthood were replaced by a chilling, constant dread. Is my child next? Conversations weren't conversations anymore. They were hushed exchanges, spoken in low voices behind closed doors or in the corners of the poultry plant during breaks. Did you hear? Another one? Who is it this time? Information traveled like secrets through fragile community networks. Phone calls made with shaking hands. Messages passed quickly at church. Quiet warnings shared between trusted neighbors. Keep your boy close. Tell your daughter not to walk alone. It wasn't gossip. It was survival. Every new disappearance wasn't just a tragedy happening to someone else. It was a terrifying warning shot for everyone. The sense that it could be us tomorrow hung thick in the air. The physical reminders were everywhere. Screaming the absence, the empty chair at the dinner table, where a son used to sit, the untouched bed in a shared room, the sheets still neat, gathering dust, a sister staring at the silent phone, willing it to ring with her brother's voice, a father passing his daughter's closed bedroom door, pausing, unable to go in. These weren't just empty rooms. They were open wounds in the heart of the home. They were constant, painful questions. Where is he sleeping tonight? Is she cold? Is she hungry? Are they hurting her? The silence from those spaces was louder than any noise. The weight of this unbearable uncertainty crushed one mother completely. Her son had vanished months before. She hadn't slept properly since. Her eyes were hollow. Her voice, when she finally spoke about it, wasn't loud or angry. It was thick, choked, scraped raw by endless tears. She didn't demand answers about why or who. Her plea was simpler, more desperate, more heartbreaking than anything else. She looked straight ahead, her words falling like stones. "I just want to know if my son is alive. Just tell me if he is alive. That's all. After everything." That was the fragile thread of hope she clung to. The simple, agonizing need to know if her child still breathed. That single sentence held the ocean of grief drowning an entire community. The fear wasn't just about where they went. It was the terrifying mystery of why they vanished so suddenly. Why leave without a word? Why cut off all contact? Why disappear into thin air? Was it something they did? Something the family did? Was it a threat? A debt? A trap? Was someone forcing them? The lack of answers fed the worst imaginations. Parents replayed every conversation, every look, every slight worry from the days before the disappearance. Did I miss something? Was he scared and didn't tell me? Did she try to warn me? The why became a monster under the bed, growing larger and more terrifying with every passing day of silence. This constant fear, this relentless uncertainty, began to poison the community from the inside. Trust, the glue that holds people together, started to dissolve. Could you trust your neighbors anymore? Was someone watching? Was someone involved? Even friends looked different. Did they know something they weren't saying? Was their kindness hiding something dark? The wider town of Culpeper felt different too. The friendly streets now felt like places where danger could be hiding. The authorities, meant to protect, were often seen as a source of fear themselves, a risk to report to. Not a source of help. The sense of belonging, of being part of Culpeper, cracked and splintered. The immigrant community, already living on the edge, retreated further into the shadows, bound together by shared terror and suspicion of everything outside their immediate circle. The most fundamental thing was stolen, the feeling of safety. Safety wasn't an idea anymore. It was a shattered illusion. Parents stopped letting their kids walk to the store alone. They stopped letting them stay out after dark. They questioned every outing, every friend. Teenagers themselves lived with a low hum of anxiety. Going to school, going to work, ordinary acts became fraught with tension. Will I make it home tonight? The world outside their front door felt like hostile territory. The very place they had come to for refuge, for a better life, had become a place where their children were hunted. Vanishing without a trace. The promise of Culpeper, of America, felt broken. The fracture wasn't just in their sense of security. It was in their faith, in their hope, in their belief that they could ever truly be safe here. So, they lived. They got up. They went to work. They sent money back home. They tried to smile, but they lived surrounded by ghosts. The ghosts of the missing haunted every street corner, every school hallway, every shift at the plant. The ghosts whispered in the silence of empty bedrooms. They sat in the vacant chairs. They were carried in the tear-stained photos clutched in trembling hands. The fear wasn't abstract. It was the taste of salt from dried tears. It was the ache in a mother's arms that longed to hold her child. It was the heavy silence where a brother's laugh used to be. It was the daily, crushing weight of not knowing. This was the human toll, a community living in a state of suspended grief, haunted by absence, and paralyzed by the terrifying question mark hanging over their children's lives. By 2023, fear wasn't an emotion anymore in Culpeper's Guatemalan community. It was the air they breathed. It was the water they swam in. It was the new normal, a normal no parent should ever have to accept, a normal where the most basic human hope, the safety of your child, felt like a distant, impossible dream. 50 missing teenagers, vanished from one small town. The most terrifying question isn't if it happened. It's how, and where did they go? The silence is the worst part. It's been years for some families. Years of empty chairs. Years of birthdays passing. Years of staring at a phone that never rings. The question screams inside their heads every single day. Where is my child? But concrete answers? They are agonizingly, painfully scarce. It's like shouting into a deep, dark hole and hearing nothing back. Just that awful, empty echo. 10 teenagers disappearing every year in a place like Culpeper shouldn't be possible. Yet it happened, and understanding why feels impossible. In the hushed conversations within the community, theories take shape, born from fear and desperation. Some families whisper about debts. Maybe a parent owed money back in Guatemala. Or even here, a dangerous amount. $500? $5,000? Could someone have come collecting? Could a teenager have been taken as payment? Or as a warning? Others talk about dangerous connections reaching back home. Gangs they thought they'd escaped. Old feuds. Could threats have followed them across borders? Finding them even in quiet Culpeper? Could someone have been targeted? The fear is that the violence they fled might have found them again. Right here. Then there are the whispers about exploitation happening right here. In Culpeper itself, were some of these teens lured, tricked? A false promise of a better job in another city. More money, easier work, a chance to really help their families back home. Who wouldn't want that? But what if that promise was a trap? What if they were picked up, driven away, and forced into something terrible? Trafficking for labor? For something worse? The thought that their child, seeking a better life just like they did, might have been snatched into darkness by a predator hiding in their own town. It's a nightmare that keeps parents awake. Others look inward, at the immense pressure these young people carried. Imagine being 16, 17, living between two worlds. You go to American school. But at home, you're the adult, translating bills, explaining legal notices, working long hours after class at the poultry plant. The smell of bleach and feathers clinging to your clothes. Your paycheck isn't just for new sneakers. It's helping pay rent here and maybe building a house, or buying medicine. For family back in Guatemala, the weight is enormous. Could that pressure have become too much? Could a teenager, feeling trapped, have run towards a desperate, risky chance somewhere else? Jumped on a bus heading west with no plan? Tried to cross another border alone? The fear is that the dream they were working for broke them, leading them into even greater danger. And then there's the darkest thought, the one that hangs heaviest in the silence: foul play. The terrifying possibility that someone hurt them, that they were taken against their will, that they met violence right here on the streets they knew. Was it random? Was it targeted because they were vulnerable? Because they were Guatemalan? Because they were young and unlikely to be reported missing quickly? This isn't just fear. It's a chilling, gut-wrenching dread that haunts every family still waiting. It's the question mark that turns every stranger's glance into a potential threat. These are the whispers, the desperate attempts to fill the terrifying void of not knowing. Theories swirling in kitchens, in church halls, over factory lunch breaks. Debt, gangs, trafficking, desperation, violence. But they're just that, theories. Shadows on a wall. There's no proof. No bodies found. No witnesses stepping forward with clear stories. No smoking gun. Just the awful, persistent fact: their children are gone, vanished, and the why remains a gaping, terrifying hole. 9 to 10:30, the invisible investigation. What makes the void deeper, colder, is the feeling of being unseen. Despite the sheer numbers, 10 kids vanishing year after year, many families felt official investigations moved slowly, painfully slowly, or barely moved at all. Reports filed seemed to vanish into a bureaucratic fog. Leads felt like they weren't pursued with the urgency 50 missing children demand. Why? Was it because the victims were from immigrant families? Because some parents were afraid to push? Afraid of drawing the wrong kind of attention? Because resources were thin? Because their disappearances were too quickly labeled runaways at the start? A label that stuck? The lack of loud, visible, relentless effort to find their children made them feel invisible. Their worst nightmare was happening, and it felt like no one in power was truly looking. So, the question echoes, unanswered, through the streets of Culpeper and the hearts of broken families. Where are they? Are they working in some hidden factory? Trapped? Are they lost? Scared? Trying to find their way back? Are they lying somewhere? Forgotten? Or are they gone forever? The void swallows the theories. It swallows the years. It swallows hope, piece by piece. For the families, the where isn't just a location on a map. It's the difference between hope and despair, between believing their child might walk through the door again and knowing they never will. That void isn't empty space. It's filled with the crushing weight of not knowing and the deafening silence of 50 missing voices. Not all silence is empty. In the suffocating fear, whispers of hope began. But were they loud enough? Were they fast enough? The families weren't completely alone. While official channels often felt silent, other voices rose. Local advocates, people who saw the pain, who understood the fear, started pushing. Immigrant support groups, often working with little money and big hearts. became lifelines. They helped families navigate the terrifying maze of reporting a missing child when you're afraid of the system. They translated documents. They made phone calls. They held hands. They listened to the tears. They refused to let the disappearances be forgotten in the shadows. They became the family's desperate megaphone. Then, a powerful, heartbreaking shift. Some families, crushed by years of silence and burning with the need to find their children, did the unthinkable. They stepped out of the shadows, defying the deep, ingrained fear of deportation, of attention, of retaliation. They went public. They stood before local news cameras, their hands trembling. They held up photos, school pictures, birthday snapshots, images frozen in happier times. "This is my son," a father would say, his voice cracking as he pointed to the smiling face. "His name is Miguel. He was 17. He vanished in 2019. Please, help us find him." A mother clutched her daughter's picture. "Maria. She is my heart. She disappeared walking home from work. Have you seen her?" These weren't just photos. They were acts of incredible courage, weapons against the silence. They forced Culpeper, and the world beyond, to see the faces of the missing. A handful of determined journalists, local and some from further away, heard these pleas. They started digging. They talked to the families, spending hours listening to their stories, feeling their desperation. They looked at the numbers, 10 a year after year. They asked hard questions. Why is this happening? Why isn't more being done? They wrote articles. They published investigations. They put the words Culpeper and missing Guatemalan teens together in headlines. Slowly, painfully slowly, the story started to creep out of the immigrant community and into the wider consciousness. The sheer, undeniable scale of it, 50 young lives vanished, became harder and harder to ignore. Finally, around 2022, the weight of those numbers, the power of those public pleas, and the pressure from advocates and journalists seemed to tip the scales. Law enforcement agencies began to publicly acknowledge what the community had known for years. There was a pattern. This wasn't random bad luck or a string of runaways. It was a specific, alarming crisis targeting Guatemalan teens in Culpeper. Task forces were announced. Different police departments and agencies promised to work together. Hotlines were set up. Flyers with the missing teens' faces, finally bearing official stamps, started appearing in more places. It felt, for a moment, like a door was finally creaking open. Like maybe, just maybe, real resources would finally be thrown into finding answers. For the families who had screamed into the void for years, this official attention was a relief, but it was also bittersweet. It was validation, proof they weren't crazy, that their terror was real and seen. But it was also a painful question. Why did it take so long? Why did it take 4 years, 50 missing children, and families risking everything to go public before this happened? The relief was mixed with anger, with grief for the lost time. "Why now?" whispered a mother whose son vanished in 2020. Why not when he first went missing? When he might still have been found? The cruel reality of time set in immediately. For the families whose children disappeared in 2018, 2019, 2020, years had already bled away. Leads, if there ever were any clear ones, had gone stone cold. Memories fade. Witnesses move away. Phone numbers change. Trails disappear. The task force faced a mountain of cases already buried under layers of dust and silence. How do you find a teenager who vanished 4 years ago? Where do you even start when the trail is frozen? The new energy felt vital, but for the oldest cases, it also felt like trying to light a fire in a rainstorm. Desperately needed, but maybe too late. So, the question hangs heavy over every meeting, every flyer posted, every tip called in. Is it enough? Is this official effort finally happening? Happening fast enough? Does it have the resources, the manpower, the sheer relentless will needed to crack cases this cold, this complex? Will it truly prioritize finding these children from this community with the same intensity as any other missing child? Or will bureaucracy, old assumptions, or lack of resources slow it down again? The families watch, hope warring with deep skepticism born from years of feeling ignored. They see the activity, but they also see the empty chairs at their tables. Still empty. After all this time, 10:30 to 12 o'clock, the missing are still missing. The harsh truth remains, however bright these glimmers of attention, however hard the advocates push, however many task forces meet, The teenagers are still gone. Miguel from 2019 is still missing. Maria from 2020 is still missing. The boy who vanished on his way to see friends in 2018 is still missing. Their photos are held high. Their names are spoken in news reports. Their cases might now have an official file number. But they are not home. The search continues. Yes, hope flickers. Yes, but for the families living in the endless wait, the only measure of success is the sound of their child's key turning in the lock. Until that happens, the glimmers feel like small lights in a vast, dark sea. Necessary, yes, but enough to guide their children all the way home? That answer, like the fate of the missing teens, remains painfully, terrifyingly unknown. The waiting continues. The silence, for now, still holds. Culpeper's nightmare feels too big for one small town. It forces a terrifying question. Is this happening everywhere? The pain in Culpeper is real. The missing children, the shattered families, the suffocating fear. But looking at this tragedy, we can't just focus on one Virginia town. It pushes a much harder, much darker question into the light. Is Culpeper just a terrible, isolated story? Or is it something worse? Is it a horrifying symptom of a much larger sickness? A national failure hiding in plain sight? Think about it. How many other towns are there like Culpeper across America? Small towns, farming towns, factory towns, places where immigrant communities work hard, often unseen, building lives in the shadows, places where people speak different languages, places where families live with the constant, low hum of fear about their immigration status, places where resources are thin, and police might be stretched. How many of these towns have their own silent waves of disappearances? How many Guatemalan teens? How many Salvadoran teens? How many Honduran teens? How many kids from other vulnerable communities? Vanishing without the headlines, without the task forces. Are there other Culpepers out there, suffering just as silently? The cracks are wide, and they seem designed for kids like the ones missing in Culpeper. Fear is the biggest crack. Fear of police, fear of ICE, fear of being deported, fear of making things worse. This fear paralyzes parents. It stops them from reporting their missing child right away. When time is most precious, it silences witnesses. It lets predators know these kids are easy targets. Then there's the language crack. How do you explain your terror, your desperation? In a language you barely speak, how do you understand complicated police questions? How do you navigate a system that feels like a maze? And finally, the resource crack. Are missing persons units in small towns equipped, trained, and funded to handle cases involving immigrant communities? Do they have the translators, the cultural understanding, the time to dig deep when families are scared to talk? Or do these cases get pushed aside? Labeled too hard, too messy, Culpeper shines a harsh, unforgiving light on this truth. Undocumented youth and children in mixed-status families are incredibly vulnerable. They live in a dangerous in-between. They are American kids in every way that matters. They go to school here. They have friends here. Their dreams are here. But legally, they exist in a shadow world. That shadow makes them invisible to the systems meant to protect all children. Predators see this. They see the fear. They see the silence. They see kids less likely to be reported missing quickly, less likely to have a massive search party, less likely to make the nightly news. They see opportunity. Culpeper shows us, tragically, how that vulnerability can be exploited. This is the core of the failure. The desperate, screaming need exposed by Culpeper. We need systems that protect every child. Full stop. No asterisks. No fine print about where their parents were born. A missing child is a missing child. Their safety should be the only priority from the very first second they are reported gone. Their disappearance should trigger the same urgency, the same resources, the same relentless effort as the disappearance of any other kid. Their immigration status should be irrelevant to the search. Their family's fear should be met with compassion and clear assurance. Finding your child is our only job right now. Anything less is a betrayal of the most basic promise we make to children in this country, that they will be safe. The first hours, the first days, that's when a missing child has the best chance of being found. That's when witnesses remember, when evidence is fresh, when trails are warm. In Culpeper, for too many families, that critical window slammed shut because of fear, because of language barriers, because the system didn't kick into high gear, because their child wasn't seen as a priority. Imagine the difference if, The moment a Guatemalan teen was reported missing in any town, the response was immediate and massive. If the message was broadcast loud and clear, "This child matters. We will move heaven and earth to find them," that urgency, applied equally, could save lives. It could close the cracks. So, we come back to the chilling question Culpeper forces us to ask. Is this small town's horror story unique? Or is it just one visible peak of a vast, hidden iceberg? How many other young lives have vanished into the same void, victims of the same toxic mix of fear, vulnerability, and systemic neglect? How many other kitchens hold hushed conversations? How many other bedrooms sit empty? How many other mothers whisper that desperate plea? "I just want to know if my child is alive?" Without the bravery of Culpeper's families going public, without the push from advocates and journalists, would we even know about their nightmare? How many other nightmares are still happening in the dark? Culpeper's tragedy isn't just about one town. It's a stark warning, a spotlight on a deep, national failure. It reveals a shadow America, where children become invisible because of where they come from, because of the language they speak, because of the fear their families carry. It shows us how easily vulnerable teenagers can fall through the cracks, vanish without a trace, and how the systems designed to protect them can fail them utterly. The missing teens of Culpeper are more than names on a list. They are a demand for change. They force us to look beyond the rolling hills of Virginia and ask, how many more shadows are there? And when will we finally turn on the light for every child? 8. 5 years. Dozens of families shattered. A community forever changed. Culpeper's story is one of profound loss and unsettling mystery. While investigations may inch forward, for the parents waiting, the siblings wondering, the friends remembering, time is measured in agonizing uncertainty. The central question echoes: where are Culpeper's missing teens? Their faces, their names, their stories demand answers that so far remain painfully out of reach. Their absence is a wound on the town, and a chilling reminder of who can become invisible in plain sight. Until everyone is found, or the truth is known, this shadow over Culpeper remains.